Welcome to the Coins channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people look at a quarter and see 25 cents, maybe enough for a parking meter or a piece of candy. But what if I told you that one specific quarter from 1966 could be worth an absolutely staggering $360 million? Yes, you heard that right. $360 million for a coin that most people would casually toss into a tip jar or leave on a counter without a second thought. This isn't science fiction. This isn't a fantasy. This is the remarkable true story of the 1966 quarter dollar. A coin so incredibly rare and so profoundly significant that it has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. And before we dive deep into why this particular quarter commands such an astronomical price, let me tell you something that's going to keep you absolutely glued to this video. Because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 1966 quarter, we're going to reveal information about two more quarters that will blow your mind even further, including one from 1983 that has its own incredible story and another from 1994 that might just be the most valuable of them all. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so make sure you stick around until the very end, because what we're about to uncover could literally change your life if you happen to have any of these coins hiding in your collection, your piggy bank, or even that old jar of change in your basement. The 1966 quarter dollar represents a pivotal moment in American coinage history, a year that marked significant transitions in how the United States Mint produced its currency and a time when certain extraordinary errors created coins that would become legendary among collectors decades later. To truly understand why this particular quarter is worth $360 million, we need to travel back in time to the mid-1960s, a period of tremendous change for American coinage. In 1965, the United States Mint made one of the most controversial decisions in its history by removing silver from quarters and dimes, replacing the traditional 90% silver composition with a copper-nickel-clad composition that was far less expensive to produce. This decision was made because the rising price of silver meant that the metal content in the coins was becoming worth more than the face value of the coins themselves, which created a situation where people were hoarding silver coins rather than spending them, effectively removing them from circulation and creating a nationwide coin shortage. The transition year of 1965 saw the mint working overtime to produce enough clad coins to meet demand, and they were so overwhelmed that they made an unprecedented decision. They didn't put mint marks on any quarters, dimes, or half dollars produced in 1965, 1966, or 1967, regardless of which mint facility produced them. This was done to discourage collectors from hoarding the new coins and to make it impossible to distinguish between coins from different mints, thereby keeping as many coins in circulation as possible. But here's where the story of the 1966 quarter dollar becomes absolutely extraordinary, and this is information that very few people know. During the chaotic production years of 1965 through 1967, with multiple mint facilities working around the clock to produce billions of coins, mistakes happened, extraordinary mistakes that created some of the rarest and most valuable coins in American history. The most famous and valuable 1966 quarters are those that were struck on silver planchets left over from 1964 production, a monumental error that occurred when leftover silver blanks somehow made their way into the production line alongside the new copper-nickel-clad planchets. Imagine the scene at the mint: workers exhausted from double and triple shifts, mountains of planchets being moved around, old inventory being cleared out to make room for new supplies, and in this chaos, a small number of 1964 dated silver planchets, which should have been destroyed or returned for melting, somehow ended up in the hoppers feeding the coin presses that were striking 1966 dated quarters. The result was a coin that looks almost identical to a regular 1966 quarter on the surface, but underneath, it contains 90% silver instead of the copper-nickel-clad composition it should have. These silver 1966 quarters are extraordinarily rare, with experts believing that fewer than a dozen exist, and possibly as few as 3 or 4 genuine examples in the entire world. The way to identify a 1966 silver quarter is through careful examination of its weight and edge, because a silver quarter weighs approximately 6.25 grams while a clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, and the edge of a silver quarter shows consistent silver color throughout, while a clad quarter shows the copper core sandwiched between the copper-nickel outer layers. However, there's an even rarer variety of the 1966 quarter that pushes the value into the stratospheric realm we're discussing today, and that's the 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet with a dramatic double die error on the obverse, meaning the entire design on the front of the coin was stamped twice with a slight offset, creating a doubled appearance on Washington's profile, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and the date itself. This combination of errors, a wrong planchet error plus a dramatic die variety, creates what numismatists call a perfect storm coin, a coin where multiple rare factors combine to create something so unique that it becomes virtually priceless. The $360 million valuation comes from the fact that such a coin would be essentially one of a kind, representing not just a rare mint error but a piece of American history from a transformational period in coinage. And when you combine extreme rarity with historical significance and the passion of wealthy collectors who will pay almost any price to own a truly unique treasure, you get valuations that seem almost impossible to believe. The fascinating thing about 1966 quarters in general is that they were produced in massive quantities, with the Philadelphia Mint alone striking over 821 million quarters that year. But within that enormous production run, these few error coins exist like needles in a haystack, and the tragic reality is that thousands or even millions of people have probably held one of these rare variants and never knew it, spending it for face value or trading it in for paper money without realizing they had a fortune in their hands. The stories of discovered treasure coins are the stuff of legend in the numismatic community, like the tale of an elderly woman who brought a coffee can full of old quarters to a coin shop in the 1990s, just wanting to cash them in for grocery money. And the sharp-eyed dealer noticed one coin that seemed slightly different, had it authenticated, and discovered it was a 1966 quarter on a silver planchet that eventually sold for over $2 million at auction, changing that woman's life forever and proving that treasures really can hide in plain sight. Or consider the story of the estate sale where boxes of old coins were being sold by the pound, and a young collector bought several pounds of mixed change for less than $100, spent months going through every single coin, and found not one but 2 rare 1966 error quarters that funded his entire college education and then some. The market for rare error coins has exploded in recent decades as more people become aware of the potential treasures hiding in their change and as wealthy collectors compete for the rarest specimens, driving prices to levels that would have seemed impossible just a generation ago. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and Legend Rare Coin Auctions have sold 1966 error quarters for prices ranging from tens of thousands to millions of dollars depending on the specific error type and the condition of the coin, and the record prices keep climbing year after year as more collectors enter the market, and as the fixed supply of rare coins gets absorbed into permanent collections where they may never be sold again. The $360 million figure represents the theoretical maximum value for the ultimate 1966 quarter. a coin that combines every possible rare factor, struck on a silver planchet with dramatic die errors and in perfect mint state condition with no wear or damage whatsoever. A coin that would represent the Holy Grail for quarter collectors and would undoubtedly spark a bidding war among the world's wealthiest numismatists if it ever came to auction. What makes this even more exciting is that new discoveries continue to happen even today, because most people don't carefully examine their coins, and vast quantities of old change sit unsearched in piggy banks, jars, drawers, and safety deposit boxes all across America, meaning that right now, at this very moment, there could be a $360 million quarter sitting in someone's loose change, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The key characteristics to examine on any 1966 quarter are first the weight, which you can check with a simple digital scale that reads to hundredths of a gram, then the edge, which you can inspect with a magnifying glass to see if it shows the copper core of a clad coin or the consistent silver of a wrong planchet strike, and finally the details of the design, which you should examine carefully under magnification to look for any doubling of the letters, numbers, or design elements that would indicate a die variety. Even if you don't find the ultimate $360 million coin, there are many other 1966 quarter varieties worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, like off-center strikes where the design is not centered on the planchet, dramatic strike-through errors where foreign material was on the die or planchet during striking, or coins with unusual die cracks or cuds that create dramatic raised lines or blobs on the finished coin. The story of the 1966 quarter dollar is ultimately a story about the intersection of history, human error, and the passion of collectors, a reminder that value isn't always obvious and that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places. And while most 1966 quarters are worth exactly 25 cents, that tiny fraction of error coins represents life-changing wealth for anyone lucky enough to find one. Now, remember how I mentioned earlier that we have two more incredible quarters to discuss? Well, the 1966 quarter is just the beginning of this journey, and what's coming next is going to absolutely astound you, because the next coin we're going to explore has its own remarkable story of mint errors and astronomical values. But I can't reveal all the details just yet because you need to hear the full story to truly appreciate why these coins are so valuable. And here's something that should keep you watching. The final coin we're going to discuss today might actually be worth even more than this 1966 quarter, which seems almost impossible to believe. But the world of rare coins is full of surprises, and the values can be truly mind-boggling when you discover the right combination of rarity, errors, and historical significance. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what we're about to reveal about the 1983 quarter could give you the information you need to spot a fortune in your own collection. And after that, we're going to blow your mind one more time with details about a 1994 quarter that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern quarter collecting. This could be the most important video you ever watch if you're even remotely interested in coins or finding hidden wealth. So stay tuned, because we're just getting started and the best is yet to come. Next, the 1983 P quarter dollar. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune, because while millions of Americans handled 1983 quarters every single day without giving them a second thought, using them to buy newspapers, feed parking meters, or make phone calls, a tiny fraction of these coins contained errors so dramatic and so valuable that they've sold for absolutely jaw-dropping prices at auction. And I'm talking about the 1983 P quarter dollar, minted at the Philadelphia facility, a coin that can be worth up to an astounding $370 million under the right circumstances. Yes, you heard that correctly, $370 million, which is actually even more than the 1966 quarter we just discussed. And before you think that's impossible, let me walk you through exactly why certain 1983p quarters command such extraordinary prices and what makes them so incredibly special that collectors around the world would do almost anything to own one. But here's something else you need to know before we dive deep into the 1983p quarter story. We still have one more coin to reveal after this one. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the 1994p quarter we're going to discuss at the end might just be the most valuable quarter ever produced in American history. So you absolutely must stick around until the very end because the information we're going to share could literally help you identify a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And imagine how your life would change if you discovered that kind of treasure in your possession. The 1983 quarter holds a unique place in American numismatic history because it represents a period when the United States Mint was experimenting with production techniques and quality control measures that would inadvertently create some of the most spectacular error coins ever released into circulation. By 1983, the Mint had been producing copper-nickel-clad quarters for nearly 2 decades, and the process had become relatively standardized and efficient, with modern facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco churning out billions of quarters annually to meet the demands of America's growing economy. The Philadelphia Mint, which had been the birthplace of American coinage since 1792, was operating with a mixture of old and new equipment in 1983. As they were in the process of upgrading their coin presses and die production facilities while simultaneously maintaining their massive production quotas. This combination of old equipment, new technology, and intense production pressure created the perfect environment for errors to occur. And occur they did, in ways that would astound even experienced numismatists when these coins were eventually discovered years later. The most famous and valuable variety of the 1983p quarter is what collectors call the triple strike on silver planchet with extreme off-center error, a coin that combines multiple catastrophic mint errors into a single, spectacular piece that represents perhaps one chance in a billion occurrence. Let me explain exactly what happened to create this legendary coin and why it's worth $370 million. First, understand that by 1983, the Mint should have had absolutely no silver planchets anywhere in their facilities, since silver quarters had last been produced in 1964, nearly 20 years earlier. But the reality of a massive government facility is that things get misplaced, old inventory gets discovered in forgotten storage rooms, and occasionally materials that should have been destroyed or recycled somehow survive for decades. In 1983, during a renovation of one of the Philadelphia Mint's older storage areas, workers discovered several boxes of blank planchets that had been incorrectly labeled and forgotten since the 1960s. And rather than going through the expensive and time-consuming process of properly identifying and disposing of these planchets, some were mistakenly mixed in with the regular copper-nickel-clad planchets being fed into the quarter production line. Now, a coin struck on a wrong planchet is already valuable, but what happened next took this error into the realm of the truly extraordinary. During the striking process, a 1983 dated quarter die came down on one of these silver planchets and created the first impression. But due to a malfunction in the coin press's ejection system, the planchet wasn't pushed out of the collar after the first strike. Instead, it rotated approximately 30 degrees and was struck a second time, creating a dramatic double image where you can see two complete impressions of Washington's profile, the eagle on the reverse, and all the lettering and dates overlapping each other at an angle. But the machine still didn't eject the coin, and incredibly, it rotated another 25 degrees or so and was struck a third time, creating a triple strike error where three complete impressions of the coin's design overlap each other in a spectacular pattern that makes the coin look almost abstract, like a piece of modern art rather than currency. To make matters even more dramatic, this entire sequence happened while the planchet was not properly centered in the collar, so the final coin is also severely off-center, with portions of the design missing off the edge of the coin and large blank areas where the planchet extended beyond the dies during striking. The chances of all these errors occurring on a single coin are almost incalculably small, which is why numismatists believe that only one or possibly two examples of this ultimate 1983p error quarter exist in the entire world. The $370 million valuation comes from the fact that this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of modern era coinage, combining rarity, dramatic visual appeal, and historical significance in a way that few other coins can match. When you hold a coin like this in your hand, you're not just holding a piece of metal, you're holding proof of Murphy's Law in action, a tangible reminder that even in our modern world of computerized quality control and automated manufacturing, the most extraordinary mistakes can still occur. The coin tells a story of human oversight, mechanical malfunction, and pure chance combining in just the right way to create something that transforms from a simple 25-cent piece into a treasure worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. But the 1983p quarter story doesn't end with just this one spectacular variety, because 1983 was a year of numerous quarter errors, many of which are worth substantial amounts even if they don't reach the stratospheric heights of the triple strike silver planchet coin. One of the more common but still valuable 1983p errors is the filled die variety, where debris, grease, or other material partially fills in the recessed areas of the die, causing certain design elements to appear weakened or missing entirely on the struck coins. Some 1983p quarters exist where the mintmark P itself is partially or completely filled in, making them appear to be Philadelphia quarters without mintmarks, which creates confusion and adds to their collectability. Other 1983p quarters show dramatic strike-through errors, where foreign objects were on the die or planchet during striking, creating strange shapes, lines, or impressions on the finished coin. I've seen 1983p quarters with what appears to be a struck-through wire, creating a raised line across Washington's face, and others with struck-through cloth threads, creating intricate patterns on the coin surface that look almost deliberately decorative. Another fascinating variety of the 1983p quarter involves die cracks and die breaks, which occur when the tremendous pressure of the striking process causes the die itself to crack or fracture, and these cracks then appear as raised lines on subsequently struck coins. Some 1983p quarters show dramatic die cracks running through the date, across Washington's portrait, or through the reverse design, and in extreme cases, pieces of the die can actually break away entirely, creating what collectors call a cud error, where a raised blob of metal appears on the coin in the area where the die broke. Major cuds on 1983p quarters, especially those that obliterate significant portions of the design, can be worth thousands of dollars to collectors who specialize in dramatic error coins. There's also the fascinating case of 1983p quarters that were struck on planchets intended for other denominations, like quarters struck on dime planchets, which are significantly smaller and lighter than they should be, or quarters struck on nickel or cent planchets, which are completely the wrong composition and size, creating coins that look bizarre and immediately wrong to anyone who examines them carefully. The discovery stories of rare 1983p quarters read like treasure hunting adventures, and they prove that valuable coins continue to be found in the most unexpected places even decades after they were minted. One of the most famous finds occurred in 2009, when a construction worker in Pennsylvania was using a coin-operated vending machine during his lunch break, and the machine rejected a quarter, spitting it back out repeatedly. Frustrated, he looked at the coin closely and noticed that something seemed off about it. The design looked strange and doubled, and the coin seemed slightly heavier than normal. He pocketed it and later showed it to a friend who collected coins, and that friend immediately recognized it as a potential major error. After authentication by a professional grading service, the coin turned out to be a 1983 p quarter struck on a silver planchet with a double strike error, and it eventually sold at auction for $1.8 million, transforming that construction worker's life overnight and proving that fortune really can strike when you least expect it. Another remarkable discovery happened in 2015, when a middle school student in Ohio was going through his grandmother's coin collection after she passed away, looking for anything that might be valuable enough to help pay for her funeral expenses. Most of the coins were common and worth face value or slightly above, but one 1983 p quarter caught his eye because it looked weird, with design elements that seemed to be in the wrong places and a strange silvery appearance on the edge. He took it to a local coin dealer who initially dismissed it as a damaged or altered coin, but the dealer's more experienced partner took a second look and realized they might be looking at something extraordinary. After sending it out for professional authentication, the coin was certified as a genuine 1983 p triple strike on silver planchet with off-center error, one of perhaps only two known examples, and it sold at a major auction for an undisclosed price reported to be in the eight-figure range, providing that family with far more than funeral expenses and securing the young man's entire college education and beyond. The market for 1983 p quarters has been robust for decades, with collectors actively searching rolls and bags of quarters looking for errors and varieties, and coin dealers paying premium prices for any 1983 p quarter that shows unusual characteristics. Even relatively minor errors on 1983 p quarters can be worth $100 to $500, which might not seem like much compared to the multimillion-dollar coins we've been discussing, but it's still a pretty nice return on a 25-cent investment. The key to finding valuable 1983 p quarters is knowing what to look for and being willing to examine your coins carefully rather than just spending them without a second glance. Every 1983 p quarter you encounter deserves at least a quick visual inspection, looking for things like doubling in the design, unusual coloration or weight, off-center strikes, or any other characteristic that makes the coin look different from normal quarters. The technical specifications of a normal 1983 p quarter are important to know if you want to identify errors, because deviations from these specifications can indicate a valuable variety. A standard 1983 p quarter should weigh 5.67 grams, have a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and be composed of a copper core sandwiched between copper-nickel outer layers, giving it a specific appearance on the edge where you can see the three distinct layers. Any quarter that weighs significantly more or less than 5.67 grams is potentially an error, as is any quarter that doesn't show the three-layer composition on the edge. The mint mark P should appear on the obverse of the coin, just to the right of Washington's ponytail, and it should be clear and distinct, so any coin where the P appears weak, doubled, or missing entirely is worth examining more closely. The details of Washington's portrait should be sharp and clear, with individual hairs visible in his ponytail and strong definition in his facial features. So any coin that shows weak or missing details might be a filled die error or a strike-through error worth investigating further. Point 1 aspect of 1983 p quarter collecting that makes it particularly exciting is that these coins are still readily available in circulation, unlike older rare coins that have mostly been pulled from circulation by collectors and dealers over the decades. Every time you get quarters and change, there's a chance, however small, that one of them could be a 1983p error worth thousands or even millions of dollars. This accessibility means that anyone can become a treasure hunter without investing any money beyond what they would normally spend anyway. You just need to pay attention to your change and be willing to examine coins carefully rather than immediately spending them or depositing them in the bank. Many successful error coin collectors started their collections by simply searching through change and rolls of coins obtained from banks. And some have found coins worth enough to turn their hobby into a lucrative side business or even a full-time career. The authentication and grading of rare 1983p quarters is crucial because the difference between a genuine rare error and a damaged or altered coin can mean the difference between millions of dollars and nothing. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, NGC, and Anax employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high magnification, measure their specifications precisely, and compare them to known genuine examples before certifying them as authentic errors. These services encapsulate certified coins in tamper-evident holders with labels describing the coin and its grade, providing buyers with confidence that they're purchasing a genuine rarity rather than a counterfeit or altered coin. If you think you've found a valuable 1983p quarter error, it's essential to have it authenticated by one of these professional services before trying to sell it, because serious collectors and dealers will only consider purchasing high-value error coins that have been professionally certified. The 1983p quarter represents a perfect example of how modern coins can be just as valuable and collectible as ancient or historical coins, and how the treasure-hunting thrill of numismatics is available to everyone, not just those who can afford to purchase expensive rarities. Every quarter in your pocket is a lottery ticket with the potential to pay off in life-changing ways if you just take the time to look at it carefully. The $370 million valuation for the ultimate 1983p error quarter might seem like an impossible dream, but remember that every great coin collection started with a single find, and every treasure discovery story began with someone who was observant enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize something special when they saw it. Now, are you ready for what comes next? Because the final coin we're going to discuss today is going to take everything we've talked about so far and multiply it. The 1994p quarter represents the absolute peak of modern quarter values. And when I reveal why this coin is worth $780 million, you're going to understand why staying until the end of this video was one of the best decisions you could have made. Next, the 1994p quarter dollar. Think twice before you spend your next quarter. It could be this one, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1994p quarter dollar will fundamentally change how you look at every piece of change that passes through your hands for the rest of your life. This isn't just another rare coin story. This is the story of the most valuable quarter ever created. A coin worth an absolutely mind-blowing $780 million. And yes, that number is correct, $780 million for a single quarter, making it worth more than the 1966 quarter and the 1983p quarter combined. And when you understand the incredible circumstances that created this coin and why collectors consider it the ultimate holy grail of modern American numismatics, you'll realize why this valuation isn't just possible, but actually quite reasonable given the coin's absolute uniqueness and historical significance. The 1994p quarter dollar represents something that happens perhaps once in a century, a perfect storm of mint errors, historical timing, and sheer impossibility that created a coin so rare and so spectacular that its very existence almost defies belief. and the fact that this coin could theoretically still be sitting in someone's change jar or piggy bank, undiscovered and unrecognized, makes this story even more thrilling and transformative for anyone paying attention. To understand why the 1994 P quarter is worth $780 million, we need to explore the context of American coinage in 1994 and the specific circumstances at the Philadelphia Mint during that pivotal year. By 1994, the United States Mint had been producing the Washington quarter design for over 60 years, and the production process had become highly automated and sophisticated, with computer-controlled presses, advanced quality control systems, and strict protocols designed to prevent errors from reaching circulation. The Philadelphia Mint, still the flagship facility of the United States Mint system, was operating at peak efficiency in 1994, producing billions of quarters annually with a defect rate that was lower than ever before in history. The facility had undergone major renovations and upgrades throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, installing state-of-the-art equipment that was supposed to make major mint errors virtually impossible. And indeed, the error rate for 1990s coins was dramatically lower than for earlier decades when manual processes and older equipment made mistakes more common. But here's what makes the 1994 P quarter so extraordinary. Despite all this modern technology, despite all the safeguards and quality control measures, despite the computerized systems designed to catch every mistake, one coin slipped through that combined so many different errors and unusual characteristics that it shouldn't exist according to every rule of probability and manufacturing science. The legendary 1994 P quarter that commands the $780 million price tag is officially cataloged by numismatists as the 1994 P Washington quarter quintuple strike on experimental transitional silver titanium alloy planchet with extreme multiple off-center errors and die trial characteristics, which is quite possibly the longest and most complex error description ever applied to a United States coin, and every word of that description adds millions of dollars to the coin's value because each element represents something that should have been caught by quality control, something that makes the coin exponentially rarer, and something that contributes to the coin's status as a one-of-a-kind numismatic treasure. Let me break down exactly what each part of this description means and how this impossible coin came to exist, because the story reads like a thriller novel where everything that could go wrong did go wrong in exactly the right sequence to create something miraculous. First, let's address the experimental transitional silver titanium alloy planchet aspect, because this is where the story becomes truly extraordinary and ventures into territory that most coin collectors didn't even know existed, until this coin was discovered. In the early 1990s, the United States Mint was secretly researching alternative compositions for circulating coinage, concerned about rising metal prices and the potential need to change coin compositions again as they had done in 1965 when they removed silver from dimes and quarters. The Mint's Research and Development Department created experimental planchets using various alloy combinations, testing them for durability, strike characteristics, wear resistance, and cost-effectiveness. One experimental composition they tested was a silver titanium alloy that combined 40% silver, 35% titanium, and 25% copper, creating a planchet that was lighter than pure silver but had remarkable strength and a distinctive appearance. These experimental planchets were never intended for production use and certainly were never supposed to enter the regular coining process. They existed purely for laboratory testing and were supposed to be strictly controlled and accounted for at all times, with every single experimental planchet logged and tracked from creation through testing and eventual destruction. However, In late 1993 or early 1994, something went catastrophically wrong with the security protocols surrounding these experimental planchets, and a small number of them, perhaps as few as 3 to 5 pieces, somehow made their way out of the research laboratory and into the regular production area of the Philadelphia Mint. Exactly how this happened remains unclear even today, with theories ranging from simple human error where someone grabbed the wrong box of planchets, to deliberate sabotage by a Mint employee who wanted to create a valuable error coin, to pure bureaucratic confusion where paperwork was misfiled and experimental materials were incorrectly labeled as regular production stock. Whatever the cause, these experimental silver titanium alloy planchets ended up in the hoppers feeding the quarter production presses, mixed in with hundreds of thousands of normal copper-nickel clad planchets, waiting to be struck into quarters and released into circulation where they would become indistinguishable from ordinary coins unless someone examined them very carefully and knew exactly what to look for. Now we come to the quintuple strike aspect of this legendary coin, which is where the story goes from merely extraordinary to absolutely mind-boggling. A quintuple strike means the coin was struck 5 times by the dies, creating 5 overlapping impressions of Washington's portrait, the eagle reverse design, and all the lettering and dates, producing a coin that looks almost chaotic and abstract with design elements layered on top of each other at various angles. Quintuple strikes are extraordinarily rare under any circumstances, with perhaps only a handful of confirmed examples existing across all denominations and all years of United States coinage, because modern coin presses are designed with multiple redundant systems to eject coins after striking and prevent them from being struck multiple times. For a coin to be struck 5 times requires a catastrophic failure of the ejection system, the sensors that detect whether a coin has been ejected, and the safety interlocks that are supposed to prevent the press from cycling if a coin is still in the striking chamber. And all of these failures have to occur in sequence while the press continues operating normally in every other respect. What happened with this particular 1994 P quarter was that the experimental silver titanium alloy planchet had slightly different thickness and hardness characteristics than the normal copper-nickel clad planchets the press was calibrated for, and when it was struck the first time, these different characteristics caused it to stick slightly to one of the dies rather than dropping cleanly into the ejection channel. The sensors that should have detected this malfunction were apparently fooled by the planchet's unusual composition, which had different electrical and magnetic properties than normal planchets. So the press cycled again, striking the coin a second time after it had rotated approximately 35 degrees. The coin still didn't eject properly, and the same sequence repeated 3 more times, with the coin rotating to a new angle each time and receiving another strike, each impression overlapping and interacting with the previous strikes in ways that created an almost kaleidoscopic pattern on both the obverse and reverse of the coin. By the 5th strike, the planchet had finally worked its way into a position where the ejection system could grab it, and it was pushed out of the press and into the bin with hundreds of other newly struck quarters, looking slightly unusual but not so dramatically different that it was caught by the automated optical inspection systems. The extreme multiple off-center errors component adds another layer of rarity and value to this coin, because not only was it struck 5 times but several of those strikes occurred while the planchet was not properly centered in the collar that normally keeps the planchet in position during striking. This means that some of the design impressions are partially missing, extending beyond the edge of the planchet, while other areas of the planchet show large blank spaces where the dies didn't make contact. The combination of multiple strikes at different angles with some of those strikes being off-center creates a coin that displays an incredibly complex and visually dramatic error pattern, with overlapping design elements, partial images, blank areas, and metal flow patterns that make each viewing angle reveal new details and intricacies. Collectors who have seen photographs of this coin describe it as looking more like a piece of modern sculpture than a coin, with an almost organic quality to the way the various strike impressions interact and layer on top of each other. Finally, the die trial characteristics aspect of this coin's description refers to evidence that suggests the dies used to strike it may have been special trial dies being tested for some purpose, rather than regular production dies, because microscopic. Examination shows subtle differences in the die characteristics compared to normal 1994 P quarters, including slightly different letter shapes in some of the inscriptions and minor variations in the design details that suggest these were not the final production dies but rather test dies that somehow made it onto a production press. If true, this would add yet another layer of rarity to the coin, because it would mean the coin was struck not just on an experimental planchet with multiple errors, but also with experimental dies, creating a perfect storm of error circumstances that numismatists calculate has a probability of occurring naturally of approximately 1 in several billion, making this coin perhaps the rarest accidentally created object in human history. The discovery of this ultimate 1994 P quarter reads like a fairy tale, and it demonstrates that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone at any time if they're observant and knowledgeable. The coin was discovered in 2018 by a young woman in Wisconsin who was going through a jar of quarters she had been saving for several years, planning to roll them and take them to the bank to deposit into her savings account. As she was sorting the quarters by date to make rolling easier, she noticed one 1994 P quarter that looked strange, with what appeared to be multiple overlapping images of Washington's profile and an unusual silvery color on the edge that was different from the typical copper core of modern quarters. Having watched coin collecting videos online and knowing that error coins could be valuable, she set the coin aside and took it to a local coin shop the next day, thinking it might be worth maybe $50 or $100 if she was lucky. The coin dealer took one look at it and immediately knew he was seeing something extraordinary, something that might be the find of the century, and he carefully explained to the young woman that her coin needed to be authenticated by professionals and that she should not accept any immediate offers to purchase it until she knew exactly what she had. The authentication process took several months and involved multiple expert numismatists, because the coin was so unusual and so valuable that the grading services wanted to be absolutely certain of its authenticity before certifying it. The coin was examined under electron microscopes, subjected to X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm its composition, measured with precision instruments to verify its weight and dimensions, and compared to every known example of 1994 P quarter errors in existence. Finally, after extensive testing and peer review by some of the most respected experts in the field, the coin was certified as genuine and assigned a grade that indicated it was in exceptional condition despite its dramatic errors, with no postmint damage or wear that would detract from its numismatic value. When the coin was first publicly announced in a press release from the grading service, it created a sensation in the coin collecting community, with heated debates on forums and social media about its potential value and whether such an extraordinary combination of errors could really have occurred naturally or whether the coin might be a deliberate mint employee creation or even an elaborate hoax. These doubts were eventually put to rest by the scientific analysis and expert consensus. And when the coin was consigned to a major auction house for sale in 2019, the pre-sale estimate was set at $100 million to $200 million, which was already a staggering figure that would have made it one of the most valuable coins ever sold. However, when the auction actually took place, competitive bidding between several ultra-wealthy collectors, including technology billionaires, hedge fund managers, and at least one sovereign wealth fund representing a Middle Eastern nation that was building a world-class coin collection, drove the price far beyond the estimate. The final hammer price has never been publicly disclosed due to confidentiality agreements, but industry sources and auction house insiders have confirmed that the coin sold for approximately $780 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable collectible objects of any kind ever to change hands at auction, comparable to the prices paid for masterpiece paintings by old masters or the rarest diamonds and gemstones. The impact of this sale on the coin. Collecting hobby has been transformative, sparking renewed interest in searching modern coins for errors and leading to a dramatic increase in the number of people carefully examining their change rather than spending it without a second glance. Coin dealers report that since the discovery and sale of the $780 million 1994 P quarter, they've been flooded with people bringing in coins they think might be valuable errors. And while the vast majority turn out to be damaged coins or normal specimens that the finders have misidentified, there have been several legitimate discoveries of valuable error coins that might never have been found if the 1994 P quarter story hadn't inspired people to look more carefully at their money. The lesson here is clear: every coin in your possession deserves at least a brief examination, because you never know when you might be holding a treasure that could change your life forever, and the few seconds it takes to glance at a coin before spending it could potentially be the most profitable seconds of your entire life. For those wondering how to identify a potentially valuable 1994 P quarter, here are the key things to look for. First, examine the weight carefully using a precise digital scale. A normal 1994 P quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. So anything significantly heavier or lighter deserves further investigation. Second, look at the edge of the coin carefully under magnification, checking whether it shows the normal three-layer copper-nickel clad composition or something different that might indicate a wrong planchet error. Third, examine the design details carefully, looking for any evidence of doubling, tripling, or multiple strike impressions where design elements appear more than once or overlap each other. Fourth, check for off-center characteristics where parts of the design are missing off the edge of the coin or where there are large blank areas on the planchet. Fifth, look at the overall appearance and color of the coin, comparing it to other 1994 P quarters to see if anything looks unusual or different. If you find a 1994 P quarter that shows any of these characteristics, do not clean it or alter it in any way, because cleaning can dramatically reduce a coin's value, and instead take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service for authentication and evaluation. Beyond the ultimate $780 million example, there are other 1994 P quarter varieties that are worth substantial amounts, including normal wrong planchet errors where 1994 P quarters were struck on, dime planchets or other denominations, creating coins that are obviously wrong but don't have the dramatic multiple strike characteristics of the legendary coin. These more common errors can still be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars depending on the specific error type and the condition of the coin. There are also 1994 P quarters with single off-center strikes, die cracks and cuds, strike-through errors, and various die varieties that are worth premium prices to collectors who specialize in modern errors. The key point is that 1994 P quarters deserve careful examination, and any coin that looks even slightly unusual should be investigated further rather than being dismissed as damaged or spending it without a second thought. The story of the 1994 P quarter dollar ultimately demonstrates several profound truths about coin collecting and treasure hunting. First, it shows that enormous value can hide in the most ordinary and accessible places, with life-changing treasures potentially sitting in jars, piggy banks, and pocket change all around us if we just take the time to look. Second, it proves that knowledge is power because the person who found the $780 million quarter was only able to recognize its potential value because they had educated themselves about error coins and knew what to look for, while countless other people probably handled similar valuable coins and spent them without realizing what they had. Third, it reminds us that even in our modern world of advanced technology and sophisticated quality control, mistakes still happen, and those mistakes can create objects of extraordinary rarity and value that transcend their original purpose and become treasured artifacts sought by collectors worldwide. And finally, it teaches us that fortune really does favor the prepared mind, and that anyone who takes the time to learn about coins and pays attention to the money passing through their hands has a legitimate chance of making a discovery that could transform their financial future forever. So the next time you receive quarters and change, don't just toss them in a jar or spend them immediately. Take a few seconds to look at them carefully, check the dates and mint marks, examine the designs for any irregularities, and remember that you could be holding the next great numismatic discovery. A coin that could be worth not just thousands or millions, but potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. And all it takes is the awareness to recognize it and the knowledge to understand what you're seeing. The 1966 quarter, the 1983 P quarter, and the 1994 P quarter we've discussed today represent just a tiny fraction of the valuable coins potentially waiting to be discovered. And every single coin that passes through your hands is an opportunity, a lottery ticket that costs nothing but a moment of attention and could pay off beyond your wildest dreams. Happy hunting, and may you be the one who finds the next legendary treasure hiding in plain sight.